Hello and welcome to The Knowing Show. I am your host, Christene Marie. We are addressing something tonight that really is so important. I actually was sitting here ahead of time just thinking about this topic. How do we stop worrying? And, there's so much that we can cover tonight on the show because this topic is so prevalent. And frankly, it doesn't matter what season of life we're in, it doesn't matter how old we are, it doesn't necessarily matter where we live. It is an internal state that so many of us address and have to effectively not just address, but almost conquer. I love, for those of you who are familiar and friends of the Knowing Show, I really love Theodore Roosevelt's speech in 1914. He has this section kind of nestled in this speech titled Citizens in the Republic, where he talks about the man in the arena, and kind of the rest of the speech fades away in light of this wonderful segment. But the segment around the man in the arena, the one who really knows the taste of triumph, who knows the taste of defeat, who is willing to engage with life and risk, versus the critic who is standing outside of the arena and points and sneers, but never actually tries. The one in the arena is the one who dares greatly. And yet this comes within context. And the context is those of us who have been effectively given anything to start with, whether we're coming from an affluent family, whether we're given any means of a stable household, whatever is our background and the context of our lives with which we're engaging the world, there is a semblance of responsibility. With privilege comes responsibility, and almost like an obligation toward that responsibility of what was handed down to us. And what was handed down to us could be simply that our parents stayed together. Maybe it was handed down where there actually is generational wealth. Maybe it's simply a spiritual legacy where maybe you've got, parents upon parents, and you go generations back of families who had a spiritual heritage. Maybe it's actually land, and you've grown up actually cultivating the soil, and you know the value of hard work. Each one of us comes from a background where we have effectively an inheritance to some degree or another. And so he kind of sets this stage before talking about the man in the arena, before talking about daring greatly. He talks about the context of the person who is to go and attempt greatness and be brave enough, be vulnerable enough to try. And from that speech kind of hinged a whole, I guess you could say, movement of people who are really wanting to do great things, to try hard, to effectively be willing to risk, to try in business, to try and fail in any area, athleticism. And so to this point, to this conversation tonight around worrying about tomorrow, it fundamentally prevents our ability to engage with the present that would be the arena. Whether, again, it's athleticism, whether it's business, or maybe even parenting. We don't know how to be parents. We're not taught, oh, here's, the ABCs of being a parent, now go raise them. We're not taught how to do marriage. And so there's almost every single area of our lives, there lies a vulnerability because we don't effectively know. So if it's like frozen by fear, frozen by worry of tomorrow, much less so 10 minutes from now. There's no way we can show up in the arena of our lives, daring greatly and trying and dreaming of something bigger or better than that where we came from. It's dreaming of bigger and better than where we came from, but also seeking to build on top of where we came from. So it's building on the foundation and or completely setting a new one. But if we're terrified of the future, there's no way we can build towards a future that has any dream and any kind of real belief that something could be different. I think about this man, Martin Luther King Jr., among so many others who have gone forth and dared greatly and believed for something different, tried for something different, even fought for something different. Joan of Arc. I watched the movie, what was it? Oh gosh, I forget the actress's name. I think it was back in the 40s. Like it was a really long time ago. And they made this movie about the woman, Joan of Arc. She was, I think, 14 years old, 12 years old when she started having these visions of effectively like her calling and her mission in life. And then she ends up leading France to battle in her teens. But y'all, if we're petrified, if we're living afraid, there is no way we can walk in accordance with our purpose, walk boldly and bravely, create anything new. Thinking about, we've talked about this a little bit over the last couple of days, knowing who we are, knowing our purpose, and living accordingly. If we're afraid, vulnerability cannot coexist with fear. And vulnerability really is at the heart of creativity, of ingenuity. There's a sense of being bold to dream of something new, bold to try, bold to fail, that boldness is predicated on the courage to be vulnerable. And the vulnerability is like, man, I'm actually going to be exposed. I'm going to expose this idea, shine a light on it. Is it going to work? I don't know. And I'm going to test it in a public forum and see, can this work? And the public forum may be your business. It might be going out and taking this out into, a scientific arena and really putting thoughts into action and really micro testing and then taking it on a larger scale. Whatever it is, if we are too afraid of the future, we cannot dream of something new, build something new, much less create something new, because all of that is predicated in an ability to be vulnerable and to, as Theodore Roosevelt says, dare greatly. So before we continue, I just want to jump here in the chat because y'all, this conversation is so important. What is getting in our way of living according to our own best and greatest potential? And usually it's ourselves, because of the fear, whether it's fear that we received when we were 9 years old, a parent or caretaker telling us, well, you're just not that talented or you're not that great. I talk to kids sometimes and I'm like, you are fearless. Like, you really do believe that you can be anything. And at what time in our lives, at what point did that change? At what point did we stop believing that we could produce or yield anything worthy and of true value for ourselves, for the people we love? Last night, we talked about the importance of having our why be so intrinsically motivating us, not because, even though this is good, even though it's good to be motivated by the impact it might make, but knowing beyond a shadow of a doubt that this dream, this desire, this potential for impact is so powerful and so potent that it's pulling me forward. Not the change in someone else's life, but the mission itself. So having clarity of the why and having clarity of that which even I'm good at and gifted in, to then be able to kind of form and fashion the thing which I'm creating. Knowing ourselves, knowing our mission, it all kind of comes from the internal state. And yes, hopefully people will be impacted. Hopefully communities will be bettered. Hopefully we'll have scientific breakthroughs. Hopefully there will be a furthering of our culture. But at the end of the day, is the mission in and of itself the thing to which I feel so called and compelled, whether it's justice, whether it's truth, whether it's just ingenuity and creativity, because that's inside of me. Thinking about the great artists of their time, many of them weren't even recognized. And they died unnoticed, and years later their works were recognized, but they had a song inside of them and they knew themselves well enough to honor that song and to release it, even if they didn't get praised or honored while doing so. So is the song worthy enough? Or are we going to trap that passion, trap that song inside of us because of fear? So is fear actually a greater, louder value than the thing which lights us up? It's interesting. There's been a lot of kind of tests around this, but so many times that the human is naturally oriented towards the negative. You've got the good news and the bad news, and we all want to hear the bad news. And why is that? It's so strange. It's so strange, yet knowing that that's our inclination, then it's okay, let me actually retrain my brain and repattern my brain to pursue joy and to pursue light and pursue the creativity and the dopamine hits that I get as a result of that, and pursue effectively that goodness that allows for that song to be released and come out of me in whatever modality. I'm talking, there's a little friend of mine, he's a young kid, and man, he loves soccer. And so that's like a song inside of him. And he said the other day, he was like, what did he say? Oh gosh, it was really kind of profound. He, I'm trying to remember the exact word he said, but something like, I feel depleted or something like, no, he said, I feel desperate. And he said, I feel desperate because I have not gone out and played soccer. I was like, man, there is nothing in my life, I don't think, that I would feel desperate over not doing because I love it that much, because I'm passionate about it that much. And y'all, I think we have it. I think that each one of us, even in adulthood, has the ability to find that spark, that joy, that fire, but perhaps it simply needs to be stoked in order to then be able to have that fervor surrounding it. There's this beautiful quote where it says, there's nothing more beautiful than a heart set on fire, than a person's soul set on fire. And so sometimes when we're asking this question of like, how do we stop worrying? What about just reorienting our gaze off of the thing which is causing us fear and focusing it instead to the thing which brings us life, to the thing that causes that fire to stir within ourselves? And you know what's interesting, and I'm saying this for so much myself, I grew up so oriented towards other people, but in that orientation externally, there was so much fear over, well, what if they don't love me? What if they think I'm not good enough? They were effectively, because I placed all of my value on them and their opinion of me, they defined my worth. They defined my value. And so, because I was so fixated outward, there was thus so much fear rather than kind of using that care and love for other people to be something that was internally driving me, where I'm like, oh, that's actually, I'm called to love them. And man, I get to love these people and serve and give, not for what they can do for me, not for what they can satiate in me because of my own emptiness or longing or lack of my own lack, but rather I'm so filled up. The pursuit of giving is the thing that brings me back and conjures up kind of like this replenishment inside of me. So if we're being depleted by an activity, it's really important that we actually question, is this even my mission to begin with? Or has my mission actually been like colored by fear or colored by ego or colored by jealousy? Because for so great a light, there is a great shadow. So perhaps, and this is an interesting thought, which I hadn't put the two and two together. Sometimes the greatest areas that we need to grow in could very well be the greatest areas that we're strong in, and vice versa. Same goes for our mission. The things that where we kind of risk the most could be where we also excel the most and can love the most and have the greatest impact. Therefore, there's also the greatest propensity for fear and the greatest propensity for darkness to come in and corrode the light. So, if we know something that really does light us up, perhaps it begets us. It almost, well, not even just begets us, it begets the assumption that this will inevitably hold darkness for me. Because if it holds that great of a light for me, it will equally hold so great a darkness. And now I can actually start preparing accordingly, developing the boundaries and the mindset or behaviors even to protect myself from that darkness that I know will come. I'm in this kind of interesting dynamic right now where I have um, just some folks that I'm starting to get close to. But in the dynamic that I'm starting to get close to them, there's all these stories of this. Well, I'll just be specific. My darling has two boys, and there's always this horrible tale of this evil stepmother. And I'm like, man, I freaking love these boys. And these tales are tales of almost like caution. They're cautionary tales. And so for me to just go in blindly and be like, I'm going to have no problem ever. It behooves me. It is wise for me to go and see these tales of caution, to speak with other people who have come into these situations and environments and learn from their mistakes to initially kind of prevent and safeguard myself to ensure that I act in accordance with who do I want to be to these children in this situation. So y'all, the clearer we are on our ideal for how we show up and who we want to be, in addition to understanding our why and our mission, in regards to, yes, the big glorious mission that each one of us is assigned to, but this mission right here, right now, in this context, What is the light and what is the shadow? And what is my own ideal in that? Who do I want to be? And what are the boundaries I need to put in place to ensure that I stay healthy, I stay aligned, I stay acting and behaving and thinking, because so much of our behaviors and our actions are a result of our thoughts. How do I maintain control over my mind to keep myself in alignment with that ideal, over who I want to be in the first place? But here's the thing, y'all. So often we actually don't take stock of our own ideal to begin with. So who do I want to be? That's actually perhaps where we even need to start, asking, well, what's my mission, and who do I want to be? And then kind of reverse engineering. Okay, well then how do I make sure that I maintain that and start ensuring that I can live accordingly? Just jumping over here in the chat. Hello, my friends. I am good to see you. Mike Hunt, thanks for joining. Nevins. Oh, I love David Goggins. The one and the only. Thank you for joining. I love that comment. Seven sisters. Fear does not govern me. It helps me break free. I love that. Wow, it's like every time we are sensing fear or worry, it's like, oh, time to break free from it. That's so, so, so good. Nicola, hello, good to see you. Elijah, thanks for joining. I am says, be present, quiet your mind. I love this. I'm so glad you brought that up. I was thinking about this in terms of, kind of preparation for this show. How do we actually slow down and move out of that state of worry? And I would love, if you guys are up for it, I would love to hear, what are some things that you guys have done that have really, really helped you when it's almost like, can we sense, oh, I'm actually starting to move into fear? So I'd love to hear what's been helpful for you. What's been helpful for you when you've been starting to kind of move into fear? And then how do you bring yourself into that place of peace? So you were talking about quiet your mind. I love that concept. What else? Like what, and practically, what does that look like? Bob's, good to see you. Jink, thanks for joining. Shin, I love this. Fear either breaks you or makes you. That's so good. Jason, Albert, yours truly, Todd. Hello, Thousand Air Radio. Hello, it's been a while. Good to see you. Mike, say my name 3 times fast. Eunice, hello. Silence is focus. Embrace the silence. Seven sisters. I'm so glad you said that. Man, that's so good. We're so constantly surrounded, even if it's not physically, but digitally surrounded by noise. Embrace the silence. I like it. So solitude is focus. Embrace the silence. Those are 2 very different things, because you can be physically alone, but digitally or even just cognitively distracted. But the silence of the mind, in that sense of like no inputs. I really like this concept of, so computer processing systems, they have all the inputs come in, they process the data, and then it impacts the outputs. So are we actually giving ourselves enough time to process all of the inputs that we have? And then we can handle new inputs. But a lot of times, man, if we're not giving Seven Sisters, to your point, solitude and silence, that is so necessary for the processing system to function. Allegheny Oaks, I'm glad to see you. Yash, hello. Bob's, thank you. Thanks for joining. Thank you. Allegheny says, love your necklace. I've got a sun and a moon. Eunice says, to get rid of fear, you have to have a greater fear. Man, I think I know where you're going with this, but I'd love for you to dive into that. What does that mean to you, a greater fear? I really, really love that. And I want to hear more of what you have to say, because I think even let's define terms of what does fear mean, because there are 2 very, very different meanings and definitions of fear. So I love that you brought that up. 18 Malborn, I'm so glad to see you. Juancho, hello. Will do. Underboss. I stare into the sun. Honestly, getting out in nature is Exactly right. I need to do more of that. Isn't that funny? It really does like stop. It really does kind of stop like our nervous system in so many ways and like slow it down. Just getting the natural sunlight. Joseph, hello. Ronnie, good to see you. I'm glad you're here. Nur Nurbird, hello. Wazwasa, hello. Mike, it's funny, I think you're right about the silence of the mind. It's really hard, and I have to intentionally practice that because it's not natural for me. I don't know who it is natural for unless you're in a really good practiced place of like knowing how to stop thoughts. But man, I'm practicing it daily and I'm not good at it yet of just being able to sit completely without a thought. I'm working on it. Sometimes doing nothing is more to fear. Ooh. IAT Melbourne says that's my answer. I love the seven sister command the mind because it works for you. So good. Bronco Jones, hello. Smoking Cool, hello. Risen, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you for joining. Alizar, hello. Christopher Adams, I reflect on Psalm 60 or 46:10. Be still and know that I am God. The original Hebrew for the phrase be still is the word rapha, which means to let go or to cease one's strife. Man, I love that. The book Letting Go by David Hawkins has had a really profound impact on me. And to your point, it really is like, can I let go? Can I trust? My dad told me this one time. He was like, if you can just believe that God is good. And that is something I continuously come back to. It's hard. And it does bring so much peace. Abner, hello. Everything works for the good of those who love Jesus. For God has not given us a spirit of fear. I love that. 18 Malborn. Oh, you're my favorite. Fear can mean respect or scare of something. Yes, Smoking Cool. So I love that you said that because fear, I actually was kind of leaning into this, probably leaning into the definition of it and just kind of doing more study of it over the last, I guess this was probably 6 months ago. But there's this concept, and it's a biblical concept, but I think, it extends beyond one particular religion. So bear with me. The concept is the fear of the Lord brings wisdom. And so I was like, okay, well, normally I'm thinking of fear as almost something negative, of something that I'm cowering from, that I'm afraid of, that I'm immobilized by. But to your point, fear is, in that context, it's almost like proper adoration. It's proper awe and reverence. Like that word fear of the Lord is actually reverence. And then there's this other concept of like, well, don't fear man. So how do you stop worrying? Okay, well, where is my reverence placed? Am I actually placing my reverence on the lateral, horizontal, or am I placing it on the vertical? Kind of honestly, it goes back to what my dad's saying. What are our core fundamental beliefs? At the end of the day, my worry or lack thereof is going to be a result of my beliefs at the end of the day. And so to this point, it's like, man, all right, when is the last time we really took time to consider what are my belief systems that are driving the way that I show up? Bronco says you need to get into real time reality tune in. That's good. Man, I love it. Getting present in the moment, because fear is so much of the future. It's usually the past being projected onto the future, where what I didn't deal with in the past that freaks me out. I'm looking ahead and anticipating that this is going to be my forever, or that this is how it's always going to be, rather than just present in this moment. So I'm so grateful you said that, Bronco, because I think you're absolutely right. Eunice says, having fear of the creature, if it is greater than other fears, people's judgment outcomes will diminish in comparison to that. So good. D-Wall Blaze, hello. Good to see you. Yeah, Matt Matt Hole says, I'm not afraid of anything. It will stress you out and interrupt your immune system. I agree. That totally messes up with your nervous system. And at the same time, it's funny. We actually have so looking at on the Knowing Show, we talk about our core intelligences, our intellectual intelligence, emotional intelligence, physical intelligence, spiritual intelligence. And if we look at each one of those and how they're impacted when our body goes into worry, because it's a very physical result. Like when we're experiencing fear, our nervous system gets activated, but we in our physical bodies have the ability to, yes, get stressed, but also calm ourselves down. It doesn't always need to be this whole big deal of, okay, well, how do I bring my body back into a place of peace? Sometimes it really can be so, so, so simple. Actually, probably most of the time it can be simple, where, yes, emotionally, okay, I actually might have something in the past that's impacting me in the present. I might be projecting into the future. So we've got to look at it emotionally. Yes. Why am I feeling this way? Why am I sensing worry? But physically, we can actually diminish and kind of turn down that high cortisol and high stress levels because, and I learned this a couple months ago, and it made such an impact on me. When we experience something and our body goes into what I consider the 4 F's: fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. When our body goes into that kind of stress mode, it turns off, it kind of like cuts off access to our short-term memory. So we are thrown into the past and we're not here in this present moment. So when we have high stress, that means our cortisol levels shoot up, our breathing, our oxygen levels get cut off in terms of accessing our short-term memory. You know how when you get stressed, your breath shortens and you literally start breathing faster because your heart rate's going faster? But our breath, our oxygen is not now going to our short term memory. So taking those deep breaths literally helps return oxygen to our short term memory part of our brain. And then we remember, like, oh, I'm actually not back there. I'm not in danger. So our inbuilt nervous systems, it's like there's two nervous systems, one that goes into high stress and one that brings us back into calm. And breathing literally that's the simple act of bringing our cortisol levels back down. It's really astounding. And it's simple. So when we talk about understanding and knowing our core intelligences, intellectual, emotional, spiritual, physical, knowing how our physical body is made up to help us where we don't actually need to take all these pills or medications, but actually just employ some of the things that are built into our bodies that can help us and bring our body into stasis, man, that changes so much. So I love that you said that, Matt. I think that that's a big part that's kind of missing from this whole discussion. If we don't talk about just the physical body, we'd be missing a lot. Just scrolling in the chat. Mike, hello. Omar. Ronnie, come back. A.T. Mawborn. He says still. Anthony, hello. Lord is our strength and refuge. I love this. Smoking Cool says the best way to find peace is to seek nature. So good. Interesting. Christopher Adams. If you read Kierkegaard, he writes that anxiety reveals the dizzying potential of freedom as a core part of the human condition. Think of Adam in the garden. I feel mind blown. All right, I need to look that up. Wow. Wow. Okay, so Sean says, how does a person stay faithful when there is no fear from everything this person has ever loved has been stripped away? Is this destiny? Is there a greater purpose? When there is no fear from everything this person has loved. Sean, if I'm reading that right, gosh, it's like basically everything's been lost. Is that right? I have a friend of mine. She told me this the other day. She said, everyone I love keeps dying. And she effectively was kind of alluding to, well, I need to just stop loving people. I want to read something really fast. I read this about probably 5 years in after my brother-in-law was killed, and it really was super meaningful to find. It's from a book called Lament for a Son. I want to try to find the whole quote. Okay. Grief is existential testimony to the worth of the one loved. That worth abides. So I own my grief. I do not put it behind me to get over it, to forget it. Every lament is a love song. And it's interesting. I've found that the more that I actually allowed for the pouring out of the soul, the lamenting of the soul, the more I found connection with other people, the more I found almost like a shared grief. I think whatever is trapped inside of us, that is the death of it. So if we have grief trapped in us around love that's been lost, I think that can actually be the death of our own ability to love again. But if we're allowing for it to come out, whether it's in relationship, whether it's even just on our own, but I think in relationship in and of itself can be so healing. So I'm with you. I feel it, this conversation around just like continuously losing love. Oh, iSniff says, why are we not taught this in school? I couldn't ask a better question. Isn't it wild? I mean, honestly, like the very things that are needed for us to engage in relationships, to engage in life. We're not taught finances. We're not taught our emotions. We're not taught relationships. It's nuts. But we can do it now. Reasonable 6. 18 Mallborn. Oh, wow. I would love to learn more about the Bible. It's interesting. I don't talk about the Bible much on here, and I'll just share candidly with you guys. I don't talk about the Bible much because I have personally experienced a lot of pain from my own experiences within a very religious setting. When I was most broken, the church, like a religious setting, was kind of the last place I wanted to be. Like I did not feel what do I want to say? Because I want to do this justice. Growing up where I did, and growing up with the people I did, there were so many wonderful people, but it wasn't a place where it was like safe for people who had been broken. It was, everybody kind of looked the same, talked the same, acted the same. Nobody had ever really been through anything that I had experienced. So I'm sure that there was probably a lot more happening behind the scenes. There always is, but it wasn't a place where it wasn't the arena, and I feel so passionate about creating a space for my own life, much less so for my family and for others around me, where it's like, get real with each other. And so the second, and this is, again, I'm just being really honest with you guys. A lot of times when people talk about the Bible, it's under the guise of something that's very dogmatic, and it's used as a sledgehammer, and it's so devastating, the results, rather than something that can be the conduit, and I believe can and should be the conduit for love, where it's, what are just some principles? How does God view the world? And I think the Bible, along with so many other books, I think God reveals things to us, and that's the thing. I actually want to open these pages, and I want God to speak to me, not sitting in the pews and somebody else telling me something about God. But y'all, I believe every single one of us, this is why we talk about the spiritual intelligence. It's the cultivation of the spirit, which is the kind of the tether and the access to God, where, God, I want you to tell me what you think, how you view the world. What do you love? I want to know God like that. And I have found so many beautiful, amazing, necessary truths in the Bible that have been conduits for that. And I've also found them in literally just listening, and God's taught me himself. And that's what I think that he wants for us. I think he wants to have that kind of closeness and ability to speak. So I'm so grateful you said that. And maybe I'll be brave. And talk about not worrying. I guess I've always been afraid that I don't want to turn people away, because if they've had a bad experience with the Bible, that they would just hear the word Bible or hear a word and immediately turn away. So even as I say that, I think I need to trust more. So thank you for saying that. I'm grateful you shared that. Just scrolling in the chat. Smoking Cool says, I don't believe in God. And I want to be able to have these conversations where some people do believe in God and some people don't, and we can all talk and engage with each other. That's what I mean by the arena. I love the concept of the mental arena, but then a digital arena and a physical arena where we all come together, where it's what have you experienced? What do you know? What has been revealed to you? And man, if we're humble enough, we can hear what each other has learned, and also hear the experiences and the pain that support the lack of belief, or the belief in and of itself. So that's what I hope for. Oh, I love this. Antoine says, life is an everlasting lesson. We all grow and learn differently. We can all learn from each other's experiences. We just have to walk around open-minded and be kind, compassionate, and understanding. That's so good. Joseph Leon, hello. Alex says, I agree. It's hard to find a good church or pastor that doesn't use religion to abuse or manipulate people. It sucks. See, I've heard that so many times. And yeah, yes, I'll just say yes. Seven Sisters, you hear God when you silence your mind and environment. Yes. Perry Guinness. See, we're all coming out of the woodworks with our experience with the Bible. Uh, Christopher Adams, that comes from a lack of vulnerability and the fault of human error. Thank you, my friend. Well, and that's the thing. I still hold so much regard, and I'm so grateful for. Anyways, I don't want to go too far down this path, but I'm with you on so many levels. Joseph Leon says, "Oh, he says I'm too negative." It's funny. We talked about this a little bit ago of who do we want to be? I think that that's a really important question. Who do you want to be in that regard? Do you actually want to kind of perpetuate that? And is that who you want to be? Or do you want that to change? And then based on the ideal of, and I was telling this to some kids the other day. I started out when I was 12 years old. I started my first business, and I started kids camp. I was a kid, but I ran a kids camp. I was babysitting at 12 years old for all these kids. So I was like, well, I could just babysit them all at the same time. And I was 12 years old making $1,000 in a week. And so I'm kind of tiptoeing around this idea of doing an entrepreneurs camp for kids and incorporating emotional intelligence into it. And so I don't know if I'll do that again, but I've been spending more time around kids over the last couple of weeks. And we were talking about our ideal. And, I told them, I was I want to be someone that my baseline, how I show up every day, I want to have joy every day. I want to have peace. I want to have joy. I want to be operating from love, not fear. So then the question is, okay, well, how do I do that? So it's kind of like a business, because they're, these particular kids, they are being raised in an entrepreneurial family. So I'm okay, just like how you would, where do I want my business to go? Okay, well, what services do I need to put in place? What do I need to cultivate from a business perspective in order to achieve this mission or this vision for my business? Well, what is your vision for yourself? And then what are the habits that we need to put in place, that we need to oil like a fine-tuned machine to make sure that we actually can live accordingly and act accordingly? And are we operating on pace to get to our ideal, and what needs to change as a result of that? Just jumping back here in the chat. Bob's, I'm so glad. Thank you. Mm, Sean, well, that's just it. All I can hang on to is that those who are memories would want me to remember that they all would want me to experience what joy I may in the time I have left. Oh, man, I'm with you. I think that's the best way to honor folks who have gone before us. My brother-in-law was 26 years old when he was killed. And man, did he like, oh, I got chills now. He was probably one of the most vivacious, vibrant, wholehearted human beings I've ever met. He had more dreams than anyone I think I've ever met. And so it's like, okay, if I want to honor him, then I actually want to live that way. I want to be epic and I want to live an epic life. So, man, what if our love for these people who've gone before us actually propelled us in our living rather than our dying along with them? Uh, Otto Poisey says, "What do you mean by being present?" I didn't know what that meant. Um, I actually asked somebody one time. I was like, "Give me 3 to 5 steps of being." What does being mean? Because I had just oriented so much of my life around my doing and like what I did for people. And that's what counted success for me. And that's what gave me my identity and my worth was what I did. And so this concept of being present, I was like, what does that even mean? And so I kind of started learning that actually by way of my puppy. His name was Zeus. And I would take him on walks and I left my phone at home. And I had no stimulus and I effectively had no input. So there was no music, no book, no nothing. And I was just silent, alone with my thoughts. And as I started just doing this on a daily basis, I actually just started experiencing the peace that came from the lack of inputs and the lack of stimulus. And it gave me, we talked about this just a few minutes ago, this concept of a computer processing system where it processes the inputs. But man, if we're only ever giving it inputs and we're not giving it time to process, there's no way that we can start incorporating the processing into our outputs in the way that we're living our life. And we just don't ever really get to be really aware of what's even going on right now because it's constant stimulus to inform the next few seconds rather than even reflecting on right here, right now, much less so what just happened, what was so good. And so there's a couple of things that, to your point about being present, one, eliminating inputs and existing in the silence. Seven Sisters was talking about that earlier. We talked about nature earlier. So some of these actually have a lot to do with like how to eliminate worry and fear, being present. So getting outside, literally, I like to kind of jumpstart my circadian rhythm early in the morning. So like right as the sun's coming up, going outside and actually getting fresh air and getting the sunlight, having dedicated time every single morning. I call it vertical alignment. So the concept of looking to the right and to the left and kind of having my compass navigated east and west, literally like being horizontally fixated with all the noise, all the expectations, all the opinions. My gosh, it's so overwhelming. And so I call it vertical alignment every morning because it's the principle of orienting my mind, my behaviors, my beliefs with my own alignment of, well, who do I want to be? But even beyond that, of, well, who was I created to be? Like, what even is my own potential? Because sometimes we don't even see our own potential. We actually self limit. So it's okay, well, who do I want to be? What's my ideal? But what's even greater than my own ideal? And so that's the principle of vertical alignment. And the practice of it is 60 to 90 minutes every morning to listen, to walk, to journal, to sometimes meditate, sometimes read the Bible. Speaking of the Bible, and it's just this container of time that really allows for me to be present. And our bodies have the lymphatic system, and which cleanses our bodies from toxins and waste. Roughly every 12 hours or so. Our lymphatic system does that for our brain, but we don't have anything that does that for our emotions or even our spirit. Going to the gym kind of helps with, okay, let's actually exercise and work it out, but we don't have a release of the emotional side of things. And so it's very, very important that we are actually taking the time to allow for the pouring out of the soul and the pouring out of what's inside of us. It's really interesting. I received this phrase actually from my therapist, and it was such a good phrase. I go to therapy probably once a month, maybe once every 6 weeks. And I was thinking today, I was like, I need to do it more. But I love this guy. He's actually in Spain. He's just very, he's kind of like no bullshit, like just very dry, not excitable, and I really really like that. And he's been trained really really well. So I chatted with him last year, and I think it was last year he gave me this phrase of the concept of flooded. When I am all of a sudden, it's like your water tank fills up and then it spills over. You're flooded. Like your emotions all of a sudden can go from 3 or 2 to a 10 scale like that if you're not careful. And I learned that phrase, and that was so helpful for me because I do a really good job of keeping my emotions under probably like a 3 or 4, like staying in alignment with who I want to be and how I want to be. But sometimes, man, I can get flooded. And what this time of vertical alignment does for me is that it allows for me to process and pour out and basically assess, okay, what am I bringing from yesterday that is adding an additional layer to today, where I'm actually starting my morning at a 3 emotionally or even mentally. Like, what am I bringing from yesterday, bringing from last week? And it's that time to pour it out, to release it, so that I'm kind of starting at a 0 on an emotional scale, where I'm not bringing any leftovers. So in order to maintain emotional health, yes, we need the emotional intelligence side of being aware and knowing how to convey. Well, the actual definition of emotional intelligence is the ability to be aware, understand, control, and convey one's own emotions. But it doesn't end there. It's like, okay, well, how do I continue to grow and live in accordance with who I want to be? It's not just the ability to share my emotions, but it's really mastering it in the sense of, well, who do I want to be? And am I going to get there? Am I going to be able to actually grow and kind of tweak and tailor my life so that I can become the greatest potential that I can be? Just jumping here in the chat. Oh, I love that. Smoking Cool says, I think I'm going to go fishing tomorrow. Oh, I love that. Frederick, thanks for joining. A.T. Malborn, you're so wonderful. Oh man, crafty Karen, I love this. We've lost the art of boredom and contemplation. It's funny. A friend of mine, he was like, I want my kids to be bored more, and man, isn't that so good? I was driving today with some friends, and we were silent in the car, and I almost started filling the silence, and it was just like, you know what? No, silence is okay. It's okay to just sit. Somebody made a joke earlier tonight. Well, I'm sure they were being very serious. They were like, I doubt you can ever be quiet because I have a show and I talk on the show. And it was fun. I chuckled at that. And at the same time, I do have to remember that there is so much value in the silence. And there's so much value in the pausing and in the going inward. I took 2 weeks last year to just eliminate all inputs. I didn't even read books, no music, no talking to people. And it was so hard. And it felt like not just a detox, but it felt like withdrawal. I at least get addicted to that constant stimulus. And so, to your initial question that kind of lended to this whole conversation, being present, to be able to sit with ourselves, I think is one of the best gifts. But can we sit with ourselves? Do we like who we see? Do we like what we look at when we see ourselves in the mirror? Like, do we like our own reflection? So, just looking at some of these chats. Y'all, thank you so much for joining tonight. I'm so grateful for you guys. I'm so grateful for this conversation. I loved this chat. It was really fun to get to know some of y'all. I'm just looking at some of these chats. Robert Theaton, that is so encouraging. Thank you, my friend. That means a lot. Y'all, thank you so much for joining. I'm going to go ahead and hop off. I will be back on tomorrow. Nika challenged me a couple days ago to get back doing our daily Course in Miracles. So I'm going to go ahead and schedule our Course of Miracles for tomorrow morning. I actually think I have a meeting first thing tomorrow. So I'm going to do our show a little bit earlier because I'm going to go to bed rather than staying up late. So I'm going to go ahead and go to bed. I'm going to schedule this, y'all, for let's go ahead and do 7:30 a.m. Eastern. So